Welcome to Khealos' Gaming Table. I'm Khealos, and on this channel I talk about tabletop RPGs, miniature war games, and rambling walks. Since, yes, still in Orlando. But today is Wednesday. I have 2 more days of work, and then I get to fly out on Saturday, so the end is in sight. The end is nigh. And then you'll probably get to see me ramble, if I do any rambling walks, around my neighborhood, perhaps around taking laps around the school. I'm not sure yet. We'll figure it out when I get home, because I do have some plans that I want to do for the channel. Granted, as of right now, I've got 33 subscribers, so it's not like I've got a huge following, but I'm hoping to continue to grow it. And yeah, it's actually kind of nipply here in Orlando. It's like maybe 68 degrees, 70 degrees. Far cry from the summer or even a few days ago, but I'm enjoying it, especially since I'm not sweating my ass off. But today we're going to talk about something that's kind of hobby adjacent, but we're going to talk about 3D printing. I've been watching, following the hobby, I guess you'd call it, for a while. Although for some people it is pretty serious. And, it is certainly changing the face of gaming. If you talked to me, 20, 30 years ago and told me that I'd be able to buy a 3D printer and print out, an entire army for $500-$600, call it. I mean, printer, STL files, resin, somewhere in that ballpark. I probably would have laughed at you and, told you to, put me in touch with your dealer. I want whatever you're on. But, well, here we are. And the technology for 3D printing is no longer in its infancy. It is definitely maturing at a very fast rate. And it is quickly changing, the tabletop industry. Bigger companies like Games Workshop are going to be very resistant for as long as they can, because while, yeah, they do make, probably a good chunk of their revenue from, books and rules releases, as they primarily have stated, they're not really, and this might have changed, this might be, an old company line, they're not so much a game company, but they're a model company. And yeah, their books might be expensive, but take a look at their models, and they're probably not happy at the fact that there are people that are able to take, based off of some of their designs and tweak them just enough to be physically different, and then be able to sell them. And the simple truth is, they're going to be able to try and fight it. They did it with, what was it, Chapter House, I think it was, with the shoulder pads. And sure, I think Games Workshop actually lost that, but Chapter House, had to file for bankruptcy, so, in the long run, Games Workshop actually won that one. Then you've got, all the other things that they're going to try, because they did try to copyright or trademark Space Marine and a bunch of other stuff, and that's why between editions, all of a sudden everything started getting changed to the Astartes, and the Imperial Guard got changed to whatever the hell they're called now, to differentiate themselves from, to make something they could actually trademark or copyright, whatever the case is. But I'm going to try not to make this so much about a bag on Games Workshop, because I am going to try and keep this as a more positive channel as opposed to clickbaity hate on Games Workshop. But the point is, they can try to fight the trend of 3D printing, but the genie's out of the bottle. There's no putting it back, and they can go up on the different sites and file copyright claims or whatever, but they're not going to be able to stop it all. And even if you do get some sort of a 3D printed army that is Space Marine or Tyranid or Necron adjacent, you're not going to be able to play it in a official Games Workshop store. You're not going to be able to play it on an official Games Workshop tournament. But for 95% of the rest of the players, probably more, we play at our friendly local game store, not an official tournament, or we play on the kitchen table. Again, not an official tournament or an official setting. But the simple fact of the matter is, 3D printing isn't just... Alright, I'm going to swing around. There's some kids ahead and I don't feel like trying to lap them. Swing back around, turn around, start walking back, and clip this out. But the simple fact of the matter is, it's not just, Games Workshop. There are a bunch of people that when a couple of missteps, or I wouldn't even call them missteps, Khealos Game Labs kind of annoyed a certain segment of the fan base. All of a sudden, everyone was talking about, 3D printer go brr. Every time Games Workshop does something, 3D printer go brr. That's the response. And sure, there are always going to be the people that do that. And for the record, I am not in any way, shape, or form endorsing stealing of other people's intellectual property and printing it out. If you want to make your own stuff and make it, Battlemech adjacent, make it Space Marine adjacent, whatever the case is, go for it. But I am not endorsing flat out stealing other people's designs and then printing them out, especially for profit. A lot of companies are more forgiving if you're printing them out for personal use. They get less so, and high-priced lawyers often get involved if you get caught selling other people's intellectual property as your own. But the simple truth is, this technology is only going to improve. Now, will it ever get to the point of being like a Star Trek replicator? You walk up to the box, and I would like a Tyranid Carnifex, I would like a Land Raider, a Star of Clan Omnimex, and 50 Goblins, and 2 minutes later, 10 seconds later, whatever the case is, you've got your army? Probably not. I mean, you're still going to have to tweak the files, get the files, put the files in, scale them properly, put in the proper supports, all of that stuff, and then depending upon your printer, you're going to have the question of detail, because like most technologies, not all 3D printers are created equal. They're pretty far ahead, so I actually am going to keep going this way, and when I reach the bend, I'll turn around and we'll kind of start again. But 3D printing isn't just going to affect the gaming industry. I mean, it's going to, as the technology improves, as more companies like one-page rules, they're starting off small, but they're growing, and for I wouldn't say minimum amount of money, because it's still a considerable amount, but you can get vast collections of STL files. And the thing is, sure, that 3D printer is $250, $300 more depending upon the quality that you're getting. That resin's going to be $50 to $100, depending if you're going with the cheap stuff, the expensive stuff. But that initial investment, that initial $300, call it $300, theoretically, unless something happens, you only have to do that once. Sure, you're going to have, much like toner and paper, you're going to have to get supplies to refill it, depending upon how prolific you are as a printer, because one of the guys that I know, and I've gotten some 3D printed stuff from him before, great guy, he has flat out said he has, companies, regiments, perhaps brigades of battle mechs that, he's printed out, stars, binaries, trinaries, galaxies, whatever the case is, that he's never going to be able to paint. He just prints them out because he loves, checking out new models. And, going on the internet, look at 3D STLs, and you're going to find, pages for days, some of them good, some of them not so good, some of them blatant rip-offs. But there are Etsy sellers that have ripped off like the MechWarrior Online files. They're not licensed, I'm reasonably certain. But, if you want that particular style of, say, a Hunchback or Thunderbolt or, Warhammer or Marauder, whatever the case is, those that are designed for MechWarrior Online but differing from the Khealos Game Lab models, you can certainly get those. And it's not just, battle mechs. You've got fantasy figures. Again, going back to one-page rules, they've got a variety of fantasy lines, from lizard men to a bunch of others. I mean, I've looked at them. And, granted, one-page rules is, model agnostic, but I do like, some of the aesthetics of those models. And, if I ever get a 3D printer, I will probably subscribe and, be able to print out some models. I'm also a major hobbyist, so whether or not I play with those models is potentially irrelevant. I just want, stuff to paint up and, put on dioramas or test out different paint schemes, whatever the case is. And there are going to be people like that. There probably will be the people that just print everything out, and much like with battle mechs or Warhammer, they just assemble it, put it on the table. Whether or not they paint it up is a different story, but they just want to be able to push around their models, like some ancient general going over their own battlefield. But the 3D printer isn't just for gaming. There's a lot of other aspects to it, little greeblies, little details, as a lot of stuff that you might see around a particular holiday. Little decorations, you can get an STL file, print a lot of those out. I'm sure there's going to be people that are going to complain about that, because it might put stores out of business if everyone's printing those out. But while yes, the technology is getting more accessible, much like a printer, I don't think it's going to be in every household. Not everyone's going to have one, and the quality isn't going to be as great on them as we would like. I mean, there's going to be not mold lines, but there's going to be print lines, the little bits that you're going to have to cut and scrape, where the struts were holding up the model as it's being printed, and things like that. And as everyone has said, there's a learning curve, making sure that your plate is level, making sure that you get, everything scaled properly, making sure that everything is, set to the way you want it. And you're probably at some point, ready or not, you will have some failed prints. Yeah, you might have some fun with those failed prints, depending upon what it is. If it's a battle mech or something, you could do it as a damaged unit. Because I think that's what one of the guys did. He got one, and one of the weapon's arms didn't print properly, so he just kind of cut it off and used it as a damaged proxy. It was pretty cool. But on top of that, a lot of things that you might go to a hardware store for, little nuts and bolts, things like that, you might be able to start 3D printing some of those. Maybe not metal stuff, but there's a lot of small things that you might be able to print. I think it was on the ISS. They actually have a 3D printer up there. They didn't have a specific wrench or a specific tool, so somebody sent up an STL file. They put it into that printer, and 3D printer go brr, and the wrench or the screwdriver or whatever it was, they were able to print it up on the station, and boom. But I do think that is going to change the face of manufacturing. And yeah, it's going to affect some jobs, but technology always does. I mean, progress doesn't wait for anyone. If anything, there's always going to be those people that are pushing ahead regardless of the side effects or the downsides, whatever the case is. I'm sure there were people that were bitching about cars when Ford and whoever else started manufacturing automobiles, when automation came to factories as opposed to everything being done by hand. Everything started getting done by machines. How are we going to handle that? Well, that all depends upon what our leaders do and what we push for. AI is in that same bucket. AI has the power and the potential to do great amount of things, whether it's taking away a lot of repetitive and mind-numbing work and having it done quickly, efficiently, and probably corrected the first time. At the same time, a lot of those entry-level jobs are going to be done away with. Art, same kind of thing. There are, the AI arts, ChatGPT, that kind of thing, that there's the real risk of, putting traditional artists out of business, because you could go do a search for a dragonborn with a red robe standing on a mountain, and the internet is going to be scoured in a matter of minutes, seconds, whatever the case is, and that program is going to be able to cobble together something that quickly. And while there are digital artists who could create a dragonborn with a red robe on a mountainside, it's probably going to take them a bit longer. And the people are not known for their patience, especially in the age of instant gratification. Nobody wants to wait. And ready or not, it's here. And Congress can go ahead and try and put some laws in place. The problem is those laws are only going to be really relevant within the borders of the United States. And as I mentioned before, there is this great world that actually is outside of America. We're not the center of the world. What if China says, what? You sure you made some laws, but we really don't care. What they're going to do? They're going to do what they want. And not turning this into a bash China, but that isn't just China. The EU is pretty strong against monopolies and stuff like that, but all it's going to take is several countries, to stand up against it. And they might culture AI, and even they might say they're going to not foster it, but somebody somewhere in a lab, in a server bank, something, they're going to do it. And more downsides to AI is deep fakes. Whether or not, whatever your political leaning, somebody is going to create a deep fake that is going to appeal to you, and you're going to want to believe it so much that you're not going to actually fact check it. You're not going to check sources. You're just going to assume that whatever you just saw, whatever you just viewed, whatever you just read is the gospel, because it feeds into your echo chamber. And for the record, we're all guilty of it. I do try to take anything I see, especially on the internet, with a mountain of salt that could potentially kill a city. But at the same time, I'm a busy guy. I got a lot of stuff going on, and I may or may not actually dive that deep into the actual authenticity of it. And there's going to be debates about that, but it's only going to get worse. What's going to happen when pick your political figure of choice is caught saying something absolutely damning, but they didn't actually say it. Technology will get to the point where it is nigh impossible to actually refute it. And when you can't trust what you see, when you can't trust what you read, when you can't trust what you hear, we're going to be in a world of hurt. And that's where it is very important that we work on developing critical skills, so that you don't just assume whatever you saw on the internet, whatever you just read, whatever somebody just told you was the actual gospel. the truth, or fact, because I do subscribe to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. We're here looking for facts, not truth. If you're looking for truth, go find a philosophy class. But that's neither here nor there. But all right, those kids are just screwing around up ahead, so I think I'm going to turn around and head back. This might be a bit shorter video, but I'm just rambling about 3D printing. But I would love to get into 3D printing. Again, it's that initial outlay that is stopping me, because I got a mortgage, I've got utilities, I do like to eat, my wife likes to eat, my dogs like to eat, we like to have the internet, and all the other luxuries of modern life. So I've got other things going on, but a 3D printer, while it would be nice, I don't see it in the cards, not anytime soon. I can certainly trade 3D prints for a little bit of cash, or sometimes other things. I will trade some of the models that I don't have painted, actual CGL models, and some people will trade me out for some 3D stuff, and that's nice because it helps diversify your army. And the big thing I like about the 3D models is I try to only get them for figures that CGL hasn't put into plastic yet. I got a bunch of vehicles before the Mercenaries Kickstarter started up, but I'm certainly looking forward to that. Moving on to combined arms. Unfortunately, Khealos Game Labs, I think they've got one type of infantry. It's battle armor, similar to the Elementals that came with the Clan Invasion box set, and the Elementals star. But I actually would like infantry, but as my 3D printer friend said, printing something that small, not that easy. And for me, for that infantry, I really don't care about the details, because I actually cannibalized a couple of bases of Drop Zone Commander UCM infantry, because I don't see ever playing the game again. I'm not going to sell the models unless I absolutely have to, because I love the models, had a lot of fun playing, had a lot of fun painting. But I figured, the infantry I could certainly use in Battletech. Their drop zone is 10mm scale, not the 6 that Battletech is, but then up until recently, at any rate, Battletech really hasn't given a damn about scale. But I would like to get, several platoons of infantry and APCs so that you can move them around, whether it's in like a VTOL or in a tracked or hovercraft, tracked vehicle or hovercraft. And right now, the cheapest and easiest way to get that is with a 3D printer. I don't want any metal models anymore. I think I've mentioned that, and it bears repeating. I've played with metal models. Pewter is going to be one of the pillars of miniature wargaming, because for the longest time it was lead, then they went to pewter, and a lot of forces pick a game system were in pewter. But for me, that age is done. That chapter is closed. And even if there was an absolutely gorgeous model, the problem is, a brand new metal battle mech from Ironwind Metals is what, $15 to $18, possibly $20. I know the cost of materials has gone up significantly over the last year, 2 years, whatever the case is. And for that amount of money, I can get almost a full star or a full lance, and that's 4 to 5 models depending upon whether I'm going clan or whether I'm going inner sphere. I don't foresee ever giving Games Workshop any money again, but if I do get a 3D printer, I'm not going to print for Warhammer 40k or Fantasy or Age of Sigmar or whatever the hell they're calling it these days. I'll probably be doing one-page rules. I've heard rumors that the creators of one-page rules are working on like a battle mech or mech adjacent, style game, I would give it a go just to see, how they streamline it. Because while I do love classic BattleTech, there is a lot of a learning curve involved, and if they come up with a rule set that also includes, terrain similar to Alpha Strike, I'll check it out. Especially, if that rule set is free. Space battles. We were talking on Discord about Drop Fleet Commander, I think it was, the follow-up to Drop Zone Commander. The models look great. Halo, I think, was another one in that vein. The models look great, but neither of them really took off in our area. Ever since Hawk War Games got bought out by whoever bought them, I don't know if there's any real U.S. distributors. But, if somebody suddenly said, hey, I've got a bunch of Drop Zone stuff you guys want to play, I'm down. I mean, I haven't played in 5-6 years, but that doesn't matter. I've still got my my core rule book. I still have all my models except for those 2 bases of infantry that got cannibalized for BattleTech. And, one of the things that the 3D modelers do is, they might not print out full models. They might just do little kits. BattleTech is not WYSIWYG. It is not what you see is what you get, but there are modelers that really like to detail their models to differentiate them. One of the organizers, she will buy a lot of different salvage boxes just to see what she gets, and then has no issues with cutting them apart and kit bashing, like Stormcrow B or whatever the case is. I'm not quite that dedicated, mostly because it breaks my heart to see some of those models cut up. But they're not my models, so I'm not going to say much. That, they look great when she's done, so there's that. But as opposed to having to buy a bunch of salvage boxes, you can go ahead and actually 3D print some pulse lasers or missile pods or A-pods, whatever the case is. You can still cut and butcher your mechs, but you got these 3D printed pieces as opposed to buying bits from Ironwood Metals or murderizing some poor battle mech to get an arm or their missile pod or whatever. And that's 3D printing. You had your resin recasters, and that's one of the reasons that Games Workshop has moved on to the way that they do their model kits now, is to make it more difficult for resin casters to steal their work. And that's all well and good, but all the models are now more monopose than the flexible ones before. Because you look at, say, Space Marine Army from 4th edition. Yeah, there were multi-part models, but I mean, you could do all kinds of different poses. The legs were one piece, the arms were often separate. You could have a Space Marine captain holding, their bolter up in the air, put a Auspex or a grenade in the hand, and you could really differentiate them. From what I've seen of the 10th edition stuff, you really can't do that. And that's disappointing to me because, again, I'm a hobbyist, and while I might lose a lot, I at least want my models to look good. And when I did play in the more competitive scene, back in 4th edition here in Austin, I didn't win like any real tournaments, but I did get best painted on more than one occasion. I actually found the old sheets in a binder that I had forgotten about. I'll probably scan them and put them online just to show, hey, yes, I actually did win some things, if not, win a game. But that's, take your victories where you can and know your limitations. I tend to play more conservatively. I'm working on that, trying to be a bit more aggressive with BattleTech, and with some of the more experienced players' help, I'm getting more of a feel for the tactics, so that I don't feel like I'm just, nope, that looks good, and moving to make willy-nilly. But yeah, 3D printing, it's here to stay. The hobby's only going to grow, and it's going to branch out from the hobby into serious business. When you can go into a Home Depot and say, I need this and this and this 3D printed, they're going to be able to do that. I don't know if big box stores or places like that are going to vanish in my lifetime, but the simple fact of the matter is, a lot of those small things that you used to go to a hardware store or lumber yard or Walmart or Target, at some point there will be enough people that will just 3D print whatever they want. Decorations. I forget. I think he's on YouTube. He's got the Smuggler's Room, and this is a guy after my own heart, huge Star Wars fan, and he's taken his basement and turned it practically into something of a set for Star Wars, and he will 3D print all kinds of little greeblies. He'll 3D print details to fit the aesthetic, as opposed to when back in the day when you either had to pay an exorbitant amount of money for a replica or somebody to make it for you, or carve something by hand and potentially cast it yourself. You can find or design, tweak an STL file and print it out. Until the price of them comes down substantially, I don't see it creeping into the gaming market where every gamer has their own 3D printer. But it will get to the point where, hey Bob, you've got the 3D printer. Here, I'm going to buy 2 bottles of resin. I will donate these STL files and print out as much of this stuff as you can. And because, the other thing is, again, 3D printing isn't fast. I've seen people that set up their print plate, and it might take 4 or 5 hours. Sometimes they set it up and have it print overnight, and occasionally something fails. But it is going to become more prominent as more and more people get into the hobby. It's not going anywhere. But, that's progress. You're not going to fight progress. You're not going to fight City Hall. You can try. Games Workshop is probably going to be one of the last companies that goes kicking and screaming into this. Privateer Press, with their launch of Warhammer Hordes 4.0, is selling 3D printed models, and I think they're selling the STL files so that you can print your own warjacks, warcasters, auxiliary units, whatever the case is. And I do think that is probably where things are going to be going, whether you like it or not. But my crystal ball is cracked most of the time. I make a lot of my proclamations and guesses based upon different things that I've read and seen, and some of my hunches. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. But 3D printing, do you have one? Do you want one? Where do you think the industry is going? The quality of the models is just getting absolutely stunning. Is it up to the Games Workshop standard? Not yet. Give it a couple of years. And anyone, these one-page rules, the more money that they make, they're going to be able to hire better artists, better designers to actually tweak these files and make them better. And not just one-page rules. They're the big fish in that particular pond, but there are always going to be other fish and other options. It's just a question of, who gets into it and, how well they do. Do they follow the same model? But 3D printing, here to stay. I enjoy it for the most part, especially if you're looking to get a bunch of units that you can't easily. Would I get more 3D printed models of mechs that CGL has produced? Probably not. because I do want to continue to support, the companies, but we'll see. But 3D printing, what do you think? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What's your favorite aspect of it? What are some of the best legal sites that you get your STL files? Go ahead and give the page a like and subscribe. It really does help. I'm up to, I think, 33 subscribers as of this ramble. I'm looking to get some more and hoping to get some better content up, not just me wandering around rambling like a madman. Once I get back to Austin, I especially want to take some pictures of the models that I have painted. But thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.